Alright, so yesterday I was telling the story about the show Designated Survivor that I was watching, and there's another thing that I forgot about that, like I said, they showed a video that was an under, like a hidden camera video of the Republican candidate talking about how if we don't reduce immigration, whites are going to be a minority in the country by 2045 or 2050, and it was this huge, massive scandal. That was this horrible thing that they were trying to portray it as. And the other thing I forgot about is earlier in the show, they had a family that crossed the border illegally, and the kid had some condition where he needed a surgery, and they weren't going to do it originally, and then they pulled the whole bleeding heart liberal BS, and they ended up doing it, and no one questioned that. Like, there was a bit of uproar. They showed some protests and stuff, but to them it was just a normal thing that anybody who wants to come into your country and get health care should get it. And so I wanted to make a video about this, going back full circle. At the last debate, all Democrats support giving illegal aliens health care. And in the U.S., I believe there's about 20 to 25 million illegal immigrants. I mean, you don't know the exact number, obviously. Some of them currently get health care regardless, because if you go to the emergency room and whatnot. But the other problem, too, is that if this is a campaign issue that the Democrats actually support, well, then if you're someone in Mexico or Central America or anywhere for that matter, and you have some condition that you can't afford to get fixed in your own country, well, then you're just going to go to the U.S. and then they'll just give you free health care. And the thing I wanted to point out in this video was the left. Again, this is, a common topic, but I think it's something that's not talked about nearly enough, even by people on the right, is that the left claims to care so much about the poor, and we want to help the poor, and the right doesn't care about the poor, and we're the only ones that have a policy that's going to help. But then they don't help the poor. They want to spend. They estimated that it'll cost 1.5 trillion a year, which is a number that'll consistently go up, to help illegal aliens with health care. And to point out too is that in the U.S. you have millions of homeless people. You have probably tens of millions of people living in poverty. Why not help those people? I don't think you should just give them money, but create programs for them to get work. Obviously give the homeless some shelter for the time being, to maybe get them some skills so they can get a job. But again, you claim to care so much about the poor, but then you're throwing away $1.5 trillion when we don't even have. Currently, U.S. and Canada, we don't have enough money to support the amount of people we currently have. We don't even have enough money for that. Now, if you say you're going to give health care to illegal aliens, well, that's just going to mean more and more illegal aliens are going to come to the country. It's just going to cost even more and more, and it's gonna create some big problems. And a lot of people are probably wondering, well, if it's such a bad idea, then why would the left support it? And that's a pretty easy thing to answer, in that if you're on the left, especially nowadays, a lot of people seem to confuse. It's something I just want to point out quick, is that people think that politics haven't really changed the last 20, 30 years or so. But in reality, they have. Like, for example, if you're someone, I've made a video on this, but if you're someone who is a moderate Democrat, even just 10 years ago, you would be center left, or maybe even you'd be a centrist now. You might not even be center left. If you're someone who is on the far left 10 years ago, you're a moderate Democrat nowadays. You are a moderate Democrat. Like if you were a hardcore, if you were the furthest left person who ran for the Democrats primaries back in '08 when Obama won, you'd be a moderate Democrat nowadays. You wouldn't even, there'd be a handful of people who are quite a bit further to the left than you now. So the one thing that I would point out is that politics have changed a lot So people need to realize that. But coming full circle, why do the Democrats support it? Well, it's very simple in that the modern left, they don't argue based off reason, evidence, economics. It's more of an emotional thing in that um, they can't stand the sight of someone having to bear the consequences of their bad actions. For example, if you come into the country illegally, that's a crime. Therefore, you don't get the same treatment as someone who's legally entitled to be there. It's not the same thing. Again, if you're going to argue that, you would have to argue that if someone robs a bank, gives the money to their kids or their friends or whatever, that they get and they get caught, that they get to keep the money. You don't get to keep the fruits of a crime. That's not how it works. And any legal system that's like that is probably going to collapse down the road. So, wanted to make this video to point out I'd say you can't even count the amount of times to contradict the left, but this is something that needs to be talked about. It's not even talked about enough about people on the right or in the middle even, for sure. But like I said, we really need to get this message home. And the other thing too to point out is that, like I said, the left is really changing now. They're not the same left as what you knew even just 10 years ago. That's why you talk to people nowadays and they say they're center left, they're center right, they're a moderate Democrat or liberal. And you ask them, well, how long have you been like that? And they're like, oh, well, ever since I was voting. And if they've been voting for 10, 20, 30 years, they don't realize that, like I said, if you're a moderate Democrat 10 years ago, you're a centrist. If you're even a far leftist 10 years ago, you're a moderate Democrat. People don't realize just how much the political landscape has swung. And the other thing too that you might try and point out that's not true, that they might bring up, is that, oh, well, the conservatives have went just as far off the rails too, or the Republicans. And that's not actually true. The Republicans and conservatives are maybe, actually in Canada, they're further to the left than they were 10 years ago. And I would argue by a decent amount, and that's pretty easy to prove if you look into their policies. In that they don't want to really reduce immigration. They don't want to, they're full-on carbon tax supporting. They don't really want to cut health care or public sector spending in any way, shape, or form. Just a few things off the top of my head. The Republicans are maybe slightly more to the right, but again, slightly. And you can't argue that the Republicans are far right because they don't want mass immigration, because even Obama, he ran on reducing illegal immigration, and he actually deported more people in his first year of office than the average than Trump has. So claiming that because the Republicans don't want mass immigration makes them far right is not true. So that's about it as far as this video goes. I talked about a few different things, but the take-home message is, again, if you claim to care so much about the poor and you're on the left, then we need to help the people that are currently here, because when you add things up, we don't even have enough to help the people that are currently here. So bringing in more people is only going to make the problem worse. And what it shows is that if you're one of those people, one of two things is going on, or you're one of two things. You're either completely ignorant to the facts, which means you shouldn't be in office or even giving a credible opinion on the topic, or you are aware of the facts, but you want to manipulate people so you can further your own power, money, political gain, whatever you want to call it. So both of those things are very dangerous. Ignorant people making massive decisions in society is very scary, and people who are making decisions just based off being able to increase their own power is just as scary. So that's about it as far as this video goes. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.